Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Matrix.
Do you want to know what it is?
Okay, so I'm feeling kind of stuck because when I was planning the very last video for Good News for 2022, I thought that we were going to talk about success, technology, artificial intelligence, and the internet to better improve your life so that in 2023, you've got a bit of an advantage. I really started going deep into the subject of why some people are successful and some are not. And one of the biggest things that I've actually found is the divide that's existing between the traditional definition of success and what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, and the modern world, or what I like to call the global movement. And this has me at a crossroads because none of it really makes any sense. On one hand, you've got people who are saying, okay, a man must be strong, a man must be financially successful, a man must be responsible. And on the other hand, you've got what we call the modern society or the global movement that's saying it's actually okay for a boy to be a girl.
Oh, I'm a trans woman. And just because I happen to have a penis, right, that doesn't mean that this is like who I am as a person, or that genitalia doesn't equal gender. Who they are, their gender expression, that, yeah, a trans woman is a woman.
I'm trying to look at these things as a young Zimbabwean entrepreneur who's just trying to make it in this life and who's just trying to build something meaningful. And honestly, it's such a big headache because now I can't even define what success should mean to me. When I try to open up conversations, even in my research about some of these subjects, I am getting a lot of backlash. When I was trying to talk about transgender issues and what they mean for Africans and Zimbabweans, the first comment that I got was, you need to stay away from these subjects, otherwise you're putting a cap on your career.
Leave that homosexual, LGBTQ, whatever stuff alone. There are a lot of organizations funding these agendas behind the scenes. Once you start speaking against these, you will be automatically targeted, bro.
I wonder sometimes that when I raise my sons, am I supposed to raise them in the new globalized world, which says it's okay for him to wear makeup and to wear dresses if he wants, and I should accept that? Or should I try and preserve more of the traditional values that we know? President Mugabe is famous for his statement of saying,
contrary to our values, norms, traditions, and beliefs, we are not gays.
What do you really think would actually happen if a trans person actually walk around, say, 4th Street, which is one of our bus ranks in Harare? Are they actually going to make it, or are they going to be stoned to death by an angry mob of people who are completely intolerant of this? I'm recognizing that there exists almost like a parallel society here, and I feel caught in between because my definitions are being questioned this very day by some of these conversations. Because when you walk outside, of course, you're very unlikely going to meet a trans person, but when you're on the internet, if you say anything, because the internet is more of a global audience, I suppose, you know, a lot of people come up and say, no, we've got to allow these people to exist in peace. And when you really listen to both sides of the argument, it actually makes a lot of sense. Did you know that when it comes to transgender issues, some people actually say this is a biological condition. Some people are just born, say, in the wrong body. You're born as what's called a biological male. I don't know whether this is a scientific thing or whether this is a spiritual thing, but on the inside, you feel like a girl and you feel like you were assigned the wrong gender at birth. Science actually allows you to change your body physically.
A vaginoplasty is the creation of a female vagina and vulva. We're altering the physical characteristics of the individual to fit better with a gender identity that is female.
This is all constructed from the penis?
Yes, that's right. The surgeries are quite refined in the sense that they really, not only do they look like female anatomy, but they also function that way, for the most part. I mean, certainly it's a bit of a Faustian bargain. You know, it's not perfect.
We've got our very own example in Zimbabwe, Queen Tatelicious, a very prominent social media light. She is actually a Zimbabwean example of a transgender female.
Some children figure out their gender really early, and the reason why we say, oh, that's interesting or important is because they're figuring out their gender identity is not necessarily congruent with their sex assigned at birth.
Kids are allowed to do this without the consent of their parents. You can be a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, and you want to go through a gender transformative process. They give you what are called puberty blockers. If you're a boy, You don't produce a lot of testosterone. Your voice is not going to break. You're not going to grow facial hair, and your muscles are not going to develop. They can actually cut your organs. When I look at the examples of people who've done this transition, there are some people who say, oh no, I'm very happy now. Like, for example, Queen Tatalicious. You can tell by the way that she walks and the way that she talks that she's really found who she actually is. But then I've seen some videos, especially on YouTube, I'm going to put the links in the description, of individuals who, after having gone gender transformative surgery, and they're now much older, those hormones and those natural feelings, they don't actually go away. And this process is irreversible. Once you've done it, this is who you now are.
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I've had 7 surgeries. I've had 1 stress heart attack. I've had a helicopter life ride with a pulmonary embolism. I've had 17 rounds of antibiotics. I had 6 inches of hair on the inside of my urethra for 17 months. Nobody would help me, including the doctor that did this to me because I lost my insurance. I get infections every 3 to 4 months. I'm probably not gonna live very long. 7 to 10 years is when transgender people are the most suicidal. After surgery. But that's transphobic to say. We have 5 children's hospitals in the United States telling girls that they can be boys at $70,000 a pop in a surgery that has a 67% complication rate. That will kill me. We're butchering a generation of children because nobody's willing to talk about anything.
They go into states of, cognitive dissonance and committing suicide because they just feel like something isn't right. So it gets me to ask that if a teenager comes and says, I really feel like a girl even though I'm a boy, and my parents have no right to tell me who I'm supposed to be, should we really allow our children to dress in this way and to go through some of these transformations in spite of what might happen in the future? Because they need to feel the way that they feel, right? And I wonder sometimes that if my son comes to me and asks for advice on some of these issues, what do I say to him? The general African conversation, it says that, no, guys, these are values that are coming from the Wild West. America apparently is the one that sets the tone. Whatever they support and they say this should be human rights is what we need to embrace, correct? But I don't know. I feel stuck because I don't know what to advise my son. Maybe we need to put some kind of an age limit. Say you're not supposed to maybe transform your gender before the age of 18. And this does make sense because they say when you're an adult, you should be able to be free to make whatever choices you want. But guys, do 18-year-olds really know what they're actually doing? Are we saying children by the age of 18, or adults, I suppose, by the age of 18 are actually wise enough to make some of these decisions? I'm affected because I'm a young man living in a hybrid society, which is this sort of transition. I think the big deal that we're trying to talk about here is, so what does it actually mean to be successful as a man, and what does it mean to be successful as a woman, especially in this world that is torn between these 2 ideals? The right wing tells me I must be a man, I must be masculine, and when I raise my sons, I must raise them in those values and in those principles, that they've got to be responsible and they've got to do things that they don't like, because it's tough to be a man, right? Because the world is a dangerous place. And what actually stresses me out about this stuff is not necessarily that we've got trans people or we've got homosexual people in the world. I mean, anybody can do whatever they want. That's fine. That the moment we start talking about these things, hey, it's knives out. Because guess what? Most of the people, at least the ones that represent the voices, are very vocal and very aggressive. And if you say anything against them, you're going to be cancelled. One person actually went out to say, okay, these guys are already going through a lot of difficult things, and trying to find your place in a world that doesn't accept you for just being is such a difficult thing. Let us allow these people to live their lives without our commentary, because, hey, at least they deserve that much. I don't think we can just ignore these issues because they don't just affect the people that are going through these things. These guys are getting organs cut off, guys. I don't know if this is defined as harm or not, but surely we should be able to ask some of these questions for the benefit of some people who are trying to deal with gender dysphoria, so that they at least know what it actually means. One of the scariest things that's actually happening in the world right now is that transgender people are getting equal rights of the same people from the sex that they feel like they identify as. If you're a male, or like a biological male, and you feel like you're a woman, that means you have the right to use ladies' bathrooms. And this is actually something that's being passed, well, that's in debate right now in South Africa, and it could be law. And the problem with this is that children, little girls, also use these bathrooms. And there's a case in the United States where a transgender woman who was a man and he still has, all the necessary tools, he actually got into a bathroom and raped a girl, a little girl. So can we really say these guys must go through whatever it is that they're going through and we must allow them without commenting? I mean, what? Does that not actually defeat the whole purpose of us having media as a watchdog of what's going on in the world? I feel like my ability to actually share information and to communicate and to talk about the things that are affecting me and the things that are affecting even my children as they're growing up, I can't even talk about them because I'm being oppressive to people. This is a big problem for me. And when I look at people like Elon Musk, right, who represent the far right, making moves like buying Twitter, $44 billion, just in order to be able to say what he wants to say, you gotta understand that there must be something wrong here. Somebody who believes that a man is a man and can never be a woman, who will never talk to a transgender person. They'll look at them as people who are possessed by demons or going through some kind of a mental psychological condition. So therefore, that conversation is already out of the window. And also in the same vein, somebody who's actually a trans person is not willing to have this conversation because, I feel like I'm being oppressed. I would like to encourage you to check out this documentary done by Matt Walsh. It's called What is a Woman? And it really explores some of these questions. I mean, it was hilarious to see Matt Walsh coming up to trans people and to homosexual people and asking them, so, what is a woman? And everybody got completely stuck because they couldn't answer. And it was very exciting also when he met some of these African people. I think these are Kenyans, and he asked them if it's okay for a man to be a woman. And as you can see, for traditional Africans,
they're just laughing because they have never heard something like that. This is their first time to hear.
Never heard it before.
A woman have a penis, and she is a woman.
In my country, I can't go a day without hearing it. We hear it every day. So in my country, sometimes you'll hear people say, a man will say that I'm a woman trapped in a man's body. And so they say that I have a woman trapped inside me.
It's complete gibberish to them because they cannot possibly compute that a man can actually be a woman or a woman can actually be a man. So here we are with two very rigid sides of an argument and people who believe what they believe and are not going to be shaken. And there's no way for us to have a middle ground where we can actually talk about these things. I guess what I'm trying to say is, look, the world is changing. Yes, there are new ways of looking at things, but all these new ways, they're unproven, okay? Like, we know that for the last 5,000 years of human civilization, men have always been the ones that go out to work, and women are the ones who cook and provide and whatever, and the world is built up into what it is now. And I guess because we've got all these nice things now and we can afford to actually discuss social issues, we are now experimenting and trying out things that are unproven. There is nothing inherently wrong with this, but I believe that people in the media should be able to talk about these things. I should be able to come out and say, I believe this, or I don't believe in this, and not be cancelled over it.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.